Hello there, and welcome to the Rambling to Myself podcast. I'm your host, Aaron, and today we are in the music corner and closing in on the end of the Weezer series. Before anything, I want to thank everyone for supporting the videos. It may not be a lot of views and comments, but I never imagined hitting double digits on any of my videos in under days, so thank you to everyone who's watching. Now, as for the video itself, I'll be covering the good to excellent albums that Weezer has to offer in this video. From this point on, I will also increase my cap of 3 S-rank songs to 4 because it's getting a little too tough for me to just put 3 songs anymore in my list without having to squirm and overthink of what to place in my limited allowance. And to start us off, we have the most divisive album in their discography, home to one of the best album closers along with boasting some of their longest and epic tracks, the Red Album, Troublemaker.
Whoa.
Next to Beverly Hills, I unfortunately have to say that this is probably the second worst album opener, not because it's a bad song, but because it doesn't really do a good job of introducing the way that Red Album sounds, which is pretty damn grand sounding, far from a funny rock song aside from Pork and Beans. I do enjoy the heck out of this song though, and as a subreddit would put it, this is definitely a bop. But the lyrics are... The biggest strength of this song is probably how fun of a sing-along it is, and despite of the song being a bit of a misfit, it sounds like so much fun, and the inherent cheesiness of the song just adds this layer of bouncy, head-banging fun. And in a weird way, being a misfit works with the themes of the song, as well as even the single art for the song is just weird with this random anime girl. The
How
greatest
cool
man
is
that ever lived. Variations on a shaker hymn. Fucking epic. Probably one of the best songs written by Rivers. There's just so much content and the constant tonal shift is really well done. Personally, the song has triggered me a few times on the road because of the police sirens, but that's beside the point. All 11 sections are just so different but fit so well in this weird, beautiful amalgamation of a song, constantly leaping and dropping from heavy guitars to pianos, to choirs, to guitars again and again. It's just so perfectly balanced from start to finish that the song never really feels disjointed at any time throughout the track. A perfect blend from start to finish. A lot of thought was definitely put into the conception of the song. Despite how long the track is, it feels really short because of how grand it is, which is something you should be aiming for to keep listeners invested. Not much to talk about in terms of lyrics, as it's pretty much the repetition of the title, but definitely a testament to Rivers' songwriting to be able to incorporate so many different elements into one cohesive idea, as well as with some of the longer tracks that come later on the album, or like Angel and the One. Pork and Beans. Great choice of a single, though it feels like this song really only exists as a failsafe in case fans didn't enjoy the direction the band was taking on this album, which is understandable since the whole album is a big move from the usual songwriting formats of verses and choruses that the band doesn't really stray far from, if at all. The production throughout the choruses are also painfully loud, peaking at the final chorus where it's just this ball of noise, and at some points, the static coming through the mic'd up acoustic guitars is also somewhat noticeable. Maybe because it's the lead single and the band tries to take this wall of sound approach to compete with other people on the radio in the loudness war, but damn, is it really hard to sit through a track sometimes without hurting my ears or having to turn the volume down. Good idea, horrible execution. Hard songs. This track feels like the emotional embers of Make Believe poking through with a more mellow and atmospheric take. I enjoy this track quite a lot, and the slight disco hi-hats poking through is pretty sweet. Just a very sweet song in general, with this slow build up to a drawn out implosion as the guitars and cymbals come crashing in. In terms of lyricism, it reminds me of a praise chorus by Jimmy Eat World, as it's a song written about other songs that inspired the band in a weird sense. And I think the overarching melancholic and sentimental feel to the song really helps to push this song to be really good. Despite of how celebrities may often seem so far away and so above us, this song really grounds Weezer as these people that are quite similar to us, inspired and in awe of those who put us where we are today. It's a nice sentiment to see that our heroes have their own heroes as well and are actually not that different from us after all. Everybody get dangerous. Crap. Not a fan of this track. I don't think this album would miss anything if it was just removed. Troublemaker and Pork and Beans does a far better job of what this song does without adding extra hazards to my driving. It reminds me of cartoon openings for whatever reason. And it feels like Rivers just rediscovered a Maladroit track lying around and tried to write a modern rock song but failed to really make it unique. It does have a great amount of energy, though I usually skip this track. The bridge section where it gets softer and the outro section where the band is jamming out is quite enjoyable, but beyond that, I'd rather listen to Red Hot Chili Peppers. At least the lyrics are fun to read and the mix is somewhat more bearable than Pork and Beans, but not by that much though. Dreamin'.
Cool is
A nice bounce back from Everybody Get Dangerous. I do have to comment that understanding the lyrical context of this song is quite essential to enjoying the song. Through my first few run-ins with the song, a lot of the elements didn't really make sense to me and may feel a bit jarring, such as the random modern guitar riffs popping in and out through the midsection, or the midsection seemingly being far too loud in comparison to the rest song, and this random outro just comes out of nowhere. But when given context, the song just feels complete as I better understand how it's more of a story-based track rather than a music-based one. The style of the song is pretty well made with a light and floaty atmosphere that leads into something heavier with cowbells. It sounds like a scene I'd imagine someone with a fever would be feeling as they just want to drift into sleep. As the song starts to build into sleep as though the author is counting sheep, the guitar chugs into pure silence with the birds chirping, and it's at this point where I can just picture the author sleeping under the shadow of a tree, drifting as he watches kids running through the meadows, but is interrupted by his stress of life as signified by the random guitar chugging in once through the middle section. He then falls into deep slumber before violently woken up, and he proclaims how he just wants to go to sleep and just drift away from his mundane life of education and careers by sleeping his life away. For the next 3 tracks, I'll kind of just cover them and condense them into one quick review because I feel like I don't really have much to talk about them because they kind of speak for themselves, so go listen to the songs yourself. Anyways, starting with Thought I Knew.
Whoa.
Very nice and Brian does a good job on the vocals. The blend of acoustic and electric guitars feel very well produced. There's a lot of things to be appreciated from the electronic drum beat to the well mixed guitars, the random synth noises and just a general great atmosphere builder. Cold Dark World.
Whoa.
Scott Schreiner does a great job on this track. The song is amazingly produced and everything just sounds so perfectly placed. And I really enjoy the little glitchy wah pedal noises tossed in here and there, ending with Rivers' woes from Make Believe making the grandest return ever. Though the lyrics are a little on the hilariously creepy and somewhat cringing side with the sexing you up. It does contrast well with the original concept of a brighter sounding song as it helps draw out the creepier aspects of the song. And lastly, we have Automatic. I feel as though this track was left over so that Pat wouldn't feel left out and it's just a weaker version of the other 2 track. Just felt like it was a track that was made more of an afterthought of the previous 2 songs rather than an actual idea made into something. The Angel and the One. This fucking closer. I honestly think that this is the only closer that comes close to dethroning Only in Dreams for the best closer, and it probably has if I listen to it more. The production on the guitar is fucking phenomenal, especially when it first enters around the 2 minutes mark. It just sounds so masterfully mixed and fits so well, especially as the high-pitched organs just give this heavenly feeling. The song is just eargasmic from start to finish, and it's so different and fresh from anything Weezer has created even up until today. I definitely got a little emotional on later listenings when I better grasped the song and its general atmosphere, from Rivers' perfect vocal delivery to the perfect build-up from start to finish. This song is nothing short of a masterpiece. The touches of organs and this anthemic rock arena really help it achieve a grand sound that it's going for. And just when you think the track is over, this looming soundscape of piano and guitar feedback with static, akin to Godspeed You Black Emperor, just slowly crawls behind you to send you off to the heavens above. If you're a Weezer fan, this song is a must listen. Before I dive into my conclusion with the full album review, I would like to bring something new to this series by presenting a little theory of mine. I'm a big fan of analyzing lyrics and writing up stories in regards to concept albums and have done so plenty of times on the Green Day subreddit, so I'll do my best to summarize this segment of the video. If you don't really care much about my analysis into the album and just want to move on to the review, just skip to the timestamp on the screen. Alright, with that out of the way, I have a theory that the Red Album is actually a concept album, as there seems to be a loose plot that ties into a little story of a teenager growing up to find inner peace in accepting the person he is. Though whether or not this is true is up for debate, I will try my best at creating a TLDR storyline with my limited knowledge presented on Genius. Though I may write up something more in depth someday if I find the time or there's enough requests for it. I'll be referring to the main character in this story as Author since he's the one writing the story, and also it's the nickname I use for most of my Green Day write-ups. Anyways, my rendition on Red starts with Troublemaker, which acts as an introduction to the author. Rivers had stated that this song serves as a "Hello, this is who I am," which fits quite well and segues into The Greatest Man, where the author is attempting to sell himself as someone who is bigger than he actually is. Perhaps the author is trying to become a rock star, or he's just a rebellious teenager that wants recognition. Whatever it is, the author is fully consumed as he enters puberty in Pork and Beans, where he tries a little too hard and becomes a bit of an edgy rebel by doing really ridiculous acts throughout the track. On the other hand, in Heart Songs, the author is also coming to terms with his feelings and learning to channel this unkept hormonal rage through music, as it genuinely speaks to him to some degree. Unfortunately, this takes a turn for the worse, as the author goes on to do even more crazy shit, even worse than Pork and Beans within the song Everybody Get Dangerous, whilst neglecting his school life and real life responsibilities in the song Dreaming. As a result of his self-destructive habits, the author loses his friends and girlfriend in Thought I Knew, as he attempts to rationalize why they left, asking was it really him or did they just do him dirty like that. The author copes with this new isolation by stalking his ex in Cold Dark World, and similar to the sound and creation of Cold Dark World, while the author has good intentions with his actions, with the happier sappier lyrics, his actions are clearly nothing short of creepy in any one normal person's eyes, similar to how the song is contrasted with a edgier and darker sound. With his lack of self-awareness, this goes on for a bit too long, but the author does eventually snap out of it in Automatic, as he comes to accept his feelings and learn to let go. He learns that love goes both ways and that he too must be willing to compromise and not be an asshole who does what he wants and expects people to accept him or change their ways just to fit him. And as such, he comes to realize how things are more automatic and less pessimistic than he used to think of the world. The author finds inner peace, fixes himself, and moves on completely with the uplifting Angel and the One, sounding uncertain but promising and lighthearted as the author starts moving in the right direction for once in his life. And that about does it for my pretty much story time for the Red album. Do let me know if you guys want me to make a video solely on Red's album concept and perhaps any B-sides worth covering, as I do see a lot of people mentioning on the subreddit how the B-sides of Red are pretty good and even better on some of the tracks on the album itself. And with that done, here are my final thoughts on the album. Red Album is probably the most epic sounding album to date, with this almost theatrical and playwriting style of music ringing across the album. I do wish that the album went ham into a straight up album filled with 6 to 10 minute tracks instead of trying to retrofit in some typical rock songs in between, because whilst there are some more normal tracks like Everybody Get Dangerous and sillier songs like Troublemaker and Pork and Beans, the strength of the album definitely lies within the rest of the album that feels very alive and present, with a sense of storytelling and lively elements, with songs almost showcasing natural life to an extent. This album has something I don't think any of Weezer's other albums has, which is the balls to go beyond by challenging the norm of having songs be simple 3-minute verses and choruses. Whilst not nearly as near to the heart as Make Believe, the amount of emotional gut punches in Heart Song and Angel and the One is just so much that it's enough to rival the emotional trials of Make Believe. Along with the scale that it aims to achieve, the album really is something special on its own. However, similar to Make Believe, the album lacks the consistency and confidence to go all the way in experimenting and what Weezer could have possibly achieved if they did so. Furthermore, I feel as though the songs sung by the other band members could have easily been mashed into one grand track like Homecoming by Green Day, with everyone coming in on their own segments and Rivers holding it all together, but I suppose that would be nothing more than a dream for me. The production of the album is also extremely tight and well made, with the exception of Pork and Beans, which is just loud. Very loud. It's a very pleasant album to sit through otherwise, as everything is placed and mixed so well, making it very easy to loop songs and the album, as it's not really much of a chore to sit through with your ears. I think the term context matters applies perfectly to this album, as a lot of the elements on the album require a slight understanding and acceptance to the overarching themes and stories presented, as the music itself may not really make sense at times, like the jarring cuts in Dreaming, or songs just not connecting as much like Everybody Get Dangerous. But whilst all the songs do play a role in the grander scheme of things, it doesn't decrease my dislike for certain elements that were presented, such as Pork and Beans, Everybody Get Dangerous, and Automatic, that just sounds kinda generic or misplaced on the album. I have to clarify that my understanding of lyricism and themes does not equate to my enjoyability of the music, unless it's absolutely essential like in Dreaming. And as such, it only really boils down to increasing my personal appreciation for what the album is presenting to me, rather than what it actually contains. And at the end of the day, my criticisms and dislike for certain tracks still stand, as they are correlated to the musical medium chosen and not so much the words written. Similar to what I said in Pork and Beans, it has a lot of neat ideas, but not executed as well as they could have been. In the end, similar to Make Believe, whilst containing some of my favorite Weezer moments and songs, it falls short of what it could have been, as it fails to go far enough or revise certain elements on the album. Although, this time around, there's no real downtime on the album aside from Everybody Get Dangerous, and the highs on the album are definitely a lot higher. Next on the list is Hurley. It's at this point I'll remove the least favorite section, as I don't really have any songs I can really say I dislike from my top 5 picks. Instead, I will now proceed to replace it with a weaker section, which basically means that these songs pale in comparison to the other more amazing material on the album. And yeah, here we go. Memories. Great opener from the wailing guitar synths and guitar riffs with Rivers belting out Memories. This opener sets the disco theme of the album, making you just want to get up and dance. I enjoy the slight guitar harmonics in the background that come in to add this extra layer of rock and roll to it, and the way the song explodes suddenly in the chorus is just phenomenal. The biggest weakness of the song, however, would be the vocal production, with vocal filters shining through at times, along with the bass being a little muddy sounding on speakers. Ruling Me. This song is a perfect example of what Raditude could have been but failed to achieve. Probably one of my favorite tracks on the album. The disco drum beat at the start really adds this layer of fun and continues pushing the disco theme. And whilst we do end up with a very typical pop punk sounding song similar to Raditude, I feel as though the build up to the chorus is definitely worth it, and the elements presented make the song stand out far more from stuff in that generic genre. I don't immediately think of Simple Plan anymore, and the track just feels a lot more like Weezer. Unlike most of Raditude's tracks, this does a great job of making a otherwise generic track have an extra layer of craziness in the extra disco accents it presents. The synths in the chorus sound as though they are imitating the guitar with this 2-1 beat power chord muting pattern, which just adds a great layer of energy. Though production wise, there's some notable crackling throughout the song, which may come from clipping or weird mixing. I initially thought that it was my headphones coming loose, but on several listens I was able to discern that it was actually the song. Looking past the production, this is easily one of my favorites on the album, despite of how simple the song is. Trainwrecks. Trainwreck sounds like a song that's constantly trying to build up itself, from the moving train sounding synths to the palm mute guitars releasing into full strumming and ending with this explosion of everything that has been introduced up to this point. I feel that this is the direction Make Believe should have taken at times, with adding layers of synth throughout blanded tracks or having something that fits thematically with the song. The constantly flowing synths in between the verses that lead to this beautiful arpeggio-like synth is a great layer to a track that may otherwise be a boring pop-punk song. Also, Rivers is giving some level of emotion to his vocal delivery, which is always nice, with his voice almost blowing out almost at the end of the final shout. Unspoken. Unspoken is one of the hidden gems in Weezer's whole discography, and one of the few emotional points of the album that strays far away from the usual disco boogies in Hurley. The song is honestly amazing and arguably one of my favorite tracks from Weezer, period. The whole build up from start to finish is just phenomenal, from the subtle acoustic startup with soft flute-like synths fading in and out, which slowly build up over the course of the song by fluttering around, and in turn allowing space for string synths to enter to fill in the gaps of the track before allowing the drums to just kick in fully as the soft instruments try to take the spotlight before going into this Nirvana-like breakdown. The drum beat in the final breakdown is just so simplistically visceral, and I don't know what it is, but it just elevates the song from being a good track to an amazing one, as it helps push the guitars to explode, in contrast to the softness of the whole song that has been building up to this very moment. The lyrics are also notable, as the themes of inner conflict are littered throughout the tracks, with Rivers going back and forth on his rockstar life and marriage, and how his intrusive thoughts are adversely affecting his mental state and the things he wants in life, constantly being torn at the seams of not knowing what he's willing to sacrifice and what he really wants in life. There's just so much hidden within this song. I just feel like a kid in a candy store picking out my favorite parts in the song that's just perfect from start to end. Where's My Sex? The first thing, and probably the most noticeable thing about this song, is how nasally Rivers' vocals are, as they reach kind of a high, and I don't think I've ever heard him sing like this in any other songs in their whole discography, which may be intentional since the song is a joke about socks and sex. But the thing that separates this track from anything on Raditude is that it's meant to be ironic, and I'm not constantly cringing at how try-hard it is trying to be a pop and serious song. One thing of note is that I find the tempo change to be very jarring and not done well at all, and it feels as though it was just placed for the sake of having a change up in the song instead of adding to the quality of the song, as the drums sound like they randomly cut in and out as a result of a real lack of a transition or thought behind it. Runaway. This track helps with the album by giving it some space to breathe with a relatively slower and cleaning sounded emotional track, whilst maintaining the high energy profile of the album thus far by not going too far into the acoustic spectrum. From the intro piano into this constantly ringing out guitar, its strengths are quite similar to the slower tracks on Maladroit. I enjoy the gnarly ring out guitars that sound like they're constantly trying to claw their way up from the hopeless setting that the song has created, and the little build-ups between the chorus to the second verse. For a song that's as loud as it is, I am amazed by how it still manages to portray sadness that is really felt, as it resonates through the aforementioned instrumentation and Rivers' vocal delivery. Though I wish that this song could have gone a bit softer, as the album has a lack of breathing space throughout. It's still a good track nonetheless and works in context of the album. Hang On. Hang On is like if you combine all the bland Raditude pop punk tracks into a more energetic track with some drum flares and grand sitar sounding synths here and there. The song constantly adds new layers with these cave sounding synths wailing to add an extra dimension to the song with the hang on harmonies, and also allowing the sitar sounding synths to have space to have this huge stadium reverb like sound. As a follow-up to Runaway, it sounds like the song is attempting to cover the void left behind by the sadness of Runaway, as it slowly climbs back into the disco. However, the song does drag just a little bit, but that's understandable because of what this song is trying to accomplish in the context of the album. Smart Girls. In comparison to Can't Stop Partying, although the song starts off quite similarly with a pop influence from that era of music, the difference is that the body of the track, instead of solely pushing for a pure pop track, there's some sense of experimentation with the constant disco drumming and exploding choruses following up from Hang On. There are very pop choices prevalent, but I feel that the sporadic flow and choices made in the song make it work just so much better, and the lack of rapping is always very welcome. The slight throwback to Tired of Sex without name calling is also somewhat nice, although it's probably unintentional and it's just a part of how Rivers writes his lyrics. As much as I love to shit on Can't Stop Partying, I can't help but to wonder how this track would have sounded like if Rivers took a more mellow and pop approach whilst maintaining the Weezer sound on this song, as I feel that the album does suffer a bit from just having too many loud songs, with not much tracks having downtime for the album to breathe. My biggest issue with Can't Stop Partying was simply how it sounded like a pop song featuring Rivers instead of it being a Weezer track, but clearly Weezer found a somewhat balance here, and I would have liked to see what would have become of the sound without Hurley's loud and typical disco chorus. Contrasting my view, however, is the theme of the album being a dance disco album, which shouldn't have much of a downtime, so I digress. Brave New World. Picking up where Smart Girls left off, the song throttles at full force instead of building up from a soft pop start. The song just sounds very epic and badass, with these huge soaring guitar riffs constantly wailing away with the grounded power chords strumming away to keep the song together. However, what stops this track from taking the S rank and making it much better is simply how Memories and Ruling Me does a far better job of what this track is going for. On its own, the song lacks the honesty, emotion and fun in Ruling Me and the pure energy of the first track of Memories. It's a song that goes for both and does an excellent job, but it's only shy of a little extra boost to push into a territory where it stands out on its own. I do really enjoy and think that the main riff of the song is really epic and cool with this grandiose space anthem-like riff, and I appreciate the general aesthetic and the direction that the song is trying to take, but due to a lack of what I just mentioned, I think the song just fails to take that slight extra step to push it forward. Time Flies. In understanding this song, I would say that this is a perfect closer to the album. However, outside of the album, I can't say the same for this song. The song has just a horrible mix from the get-go with this constantly wobbling, other room broken radio-esque sound, and whilst I do get what Rivers is trying to go for, having a lo-fi broken sound to exemplify the song's meaning by having this hangover feeling after the party's over, the horrible production is a bit of a big turn-off. If anything, at best I can compliment this for being a very good Rivers in the basement track or a hidden track left over to be placed in the backside of Hurley for hardcore fans. And at least it's somewhat fitting to the album thematically, but on its own, I don't think I will ever really play this outside the album, as its only real purpose is to serve as an album closer and not really a song that you can listen to on its own. In essence, Hurley is basically all the best parts of Raditude taken out and emphasized upon with a generous dash of disco beats. As the album doesn't take itself too seriously, Hurley accomplishes what Raditude couldn't, as Raditude did take itself too seriously and just ended up kinda generic and cringy. A fun disco rock fusion album that knows not to overstay its welcome, Hurley is one of the shortest feeling albums in Weezer's whole discography, and it's one that you want to listen to when you just want to have a nice short and good time and leave whenever you feel like it. However, my issues with the production and the tiring ordeal it may take to listen to this album front to back at times doesn't really allow me to put this album any higher than it is. It's no secret that the production overall is pretty glaringly bad, with blatant clipping and walls of sound constantly crushing the listener left and right. Rivers' vocals are also a low point on the album, as they may come off as somewhat whiny and unnaturally high at some points. Although on the bright side, he does have more emotion than Raditude could ever muster, along with the high points of Unspoken and Runaway. The album flow also lacks quiet moments as a result of everything trying to blow up in your face, and even towards the end of the album, it never really knows when to take a breather or slow down to let the listener to rest, because the ear fatigue is really real and really present on this album, especially when listening to front to back. Similar to the White Album, which I will cover very soon. In fact, it's coming up next. I feel that this album is better if listened to in two separate sessions, as the songs are quite heavy-handed to listen to front to back due to the lack of downtime or space, as the only real quiet moments within the album are the first half of Unspoken and the few seconds of singing in Runaway. Stopping after Where's My Sex and coming back later would be my personal recommendation, as Runaway is a great entryway to the second half of the album, as it has a nice softer start to slowly edge the listener into. All in all, it's an excellent album for those who just want to experience a short sugar rush of energy, but beyond partying and the disco, the album really doesn't move away much from its overarching theme. It's a pretty solid album overall and has many great tracks, but it lacks a certain connection to tie up the working elements to come together to produce a phenomenal experience front to back that can be listened to on the regular. Breaking into my favorites, this album was originally supposed to be the next video, but I figured it would make this video far too short and the last part to be far too long. From this point on, the rest of the list are all the albums I listen to quite regularly front to back, almost on a daily basis at times. And starting off this list, we have the White Album, California Kids. Perfect as perfect openers go, this track really sets the beach theme that the album will follow suit. I love the little El Scorcho riffs in the choruses, and the mini build up before the last chorus in the full power chords with some guitar solo in the background for the final chorus is also really well made. For more careful listeners, the little solo at the end is a magnificent touch to the whole song and adds this flair to the song's overall feel. This song just has a lot of hidden things in the background that may elude listeners on their first listens, as it's deceivingly simple with a lot underneath. Along with Rivers' almost regretful sounding vocals, it's as close as classic Weezer songwriting goes, and it's straight up just fun to listen to from start to finish. All in all, great song and probably my favorite on this album.
How cool
Wind
is
Now
that?
Sail. I wish that Pacific Daydream followed this format a bit more. Whilst this song is very inherently poppy with the piano and drums being the foundation of the song, the burst-in guitars at the chorus and layers it adds does a lot for an otherwise simple pop song. Reminiscent of Make Believe with the upbeat pianos and a standard vocal approach, it's just a great track to listen to. Thank
Whoa.
God for Girls. Following Wind in Our Sail, this song is also very inherently pop, but similar to Wind in Our Sail, it has many interesting elements that come in and out throughout the whole track. From the guitar solos to this very upbeat drum beat, although the vocal filters are a bit noticeable, especially towards the final verse, I think the general atmosphere from start to finish just makes it strangely fit into the context of the whole song. Girl, we gotta. Good thing. Christmas vibes are strong with this one. I genuinely do really enjoy this song despite of how poppy it is, because I feel that Weezer takes enough of a twist for it to actually sound interesting and new. Or it could just be me preferring the old Weezer sound with guitars. Unlike Pacific Daydream, which is overloaded with softer versions of this very song, this serves a purpose by bringing variety and a bit of downtime for listeners to chill. Do you wanna get high? One of the highlights for more old school fans, as it's a return to form for the typical alt rock pop punk Weezer sound that we all know and love so well. From the guitar heavy foundation to the Pinkerton keyboards. Although not as close to California Kids to emulating old Weezer, it does a damn good job on being unique on its own. Though far from the honesty of Pinkerton, there is elements of truth that allow this song to really resonate, as it sort of tells a story from a long time ago, with Rivers recollecting his ex getting high in a cabin instead of just being a vague lyrical mess like Make Believe would have been. King of the World. Similar to Foolish Father, while this song may not be the most musically exciting track on the album, I think that the lyrical context of this song is really sweet, and reading the genius annotations of this song really made it stand out to me. As an Asian myself, wow, big surprise. It's no real surprise that some of our parents may act in ways some more Western cultures would deem as inappropriate or excessive, such as hitting people's hands for holding chopsticks wrong, or being kicked out due to superstitions or being rebellious, and it does resonate to me at some extent. And I know that parents fully do mean well, and although it may seem harsh, It really sets a tone of understanding and trust between Rivers and his wife Kyoko, in the sense that Rivers has this perspective of her upbringing and they can both communicate such delicate life events. Summer Elaine and Drunk Dory. This song sounds more generic than the other stuff thus far and just feels like kind of a leftover of all the ideas that were presented so far that were just crammed into a song that was made for the sake of pushing the album to a 10-track album. The Paranoid Android reference is cool. LA Girls. This song sounds as though it's constantly fumbling to look for words, which fits really well with the themes of the author, finding ways to prove himself to the girl of his dreams. The change up to a 6/8 time signature also helps gives a sense of urgency to this song, which may be lacking if it were to just stick to a 4/4 format. The only thing that keeps this song from ranking any higher for me would be the weaker chorus, as it feels like it's kind of looping and dragging a bit at times because it sounds kind of similar.
How cool
Jacked
is
up.
that?
One of Rivers' better vocal deliveries on the album, with the ooh harmonies doing a really good job to display the sense of hopelessness and sadness the song is trying to portray. The drums take a step back so the song can be enveloped with this huge sounding pianos carrying the tune, with little arpeggios here and there and swelling guitars that just lazily ring out, that adds this really nice layer to it. The contrasting lyrics and themes with this very grand sounding chorus is also very well done for this song, and I really do enjoy this track.
How
Endless
cool is
Bummer.
that?
It's a perfect closer, and I feel like this song is a perfect blend of Butterfly and the Future Scope trilogy, with a more intimate start that leads into an epic solo closer. Though I do wish that this album was a bit longer than it actually is. My previous album experiences would state otherwise, so I'll just keep my wishes to myself. An excellent return to form by Weezer, whilst maintaining that modern pop style they've been trying to chase all this time. I did notice that the mix is a little loud in certain parts of the album, especially on the cymbals and the almost slap sounding snares, which do fatigue the ears quite quickly when listening through the album front to back. But moving away from the production of the album, there is a lot of enjoyment to be had as Weezer takes a step back to mix in their classic alternative rock sound with this modern pop sound that eventually envelopes their songwriting in Pacific Daydreams. Besides Summer Elaine and Drunk Dory, I think all the songs are excellent in their own unique way. The execution of ideas and general sound of the album is much more thought out, with a good amount of pop experimentation that just simply works, from the prevalent pianos to the white panning guitar harmonics and bends that emphasize more on soundscape, having a lot going on in many tracks with guitar solos practically flooding the album left and right, with equally generous amounts of vocal harmonies. Therein lies the album's biggest strength of consistency and having each track shine on their own without the album, as there's just a lot to digest per track. On the other hand, as a result of an emphasis on single-worthy tracks, the album as a result feels a little jagged and overbearing at times. Perhaps adding a few more quiet tracks could have gone a long way to make it more pleasing and easier for someone to sit through the album on a regular basis, as I feel as though the album is divided at Do You Wanna Get High? I think a slight lack of album flow coupled with the single-worthy feel of each track may be to blame, as every track feels like they're constantly trying to outdo each other instead of flowing cohesively into a full idea. And as a result, the album feels like two discs to a bigger experience rather than a singular experience. Despite of how much going on instrumental-wise, I find some level of difficulty in giving my insights on the tracks, because it would just end up being me describing the songs in detail when you could pretty much get a better, if not the same experience listening to the songs yourself. It's just one of those albums that's very pleasant to listen to, and it's something you really need to listen to just to enjoy. And that about wraps it up. That's about all there is from me this time for now. Pretty short episode, I know, but do expect the final part before the release of the Black Album, assuming it doesn't decide to drop early and no one listens to any leaks. Thanks once again, and I sincerely hope all of you enjoyed the video. I'll see you in the next one. Stay Weezy.